It is Tuesday, November 10th. Let's talk PlayStation. Okay, so obviously a few days ago on Friday, I said towards the end of that video that I don't know what we're going to do with this show because we do it every Friday, but PS5 launches on Thursday, and that's obviously going to take priority. So, well, here's what we're doing. Another Let's Talk PlayStation on Tuesday. I know it's a bit weird, but we'll have this because there are some stories that we can cover up right before the console launches, and then the next Let's Talk PlayStation will actually be the 20th, the following Friday, because obviously when PS5 does come out, that's where a lot of our videos will start up, and so seems to work out best that way. So for now, let's jump into some news stories right before PlayStation 5 launches. As always, that PlayStation Plus reminder. Think you know at this point, although Bugsnax did recently get reviewed, and turns out reviewed very well. So I don't think many people are going to spend $25 on this game, but now that it's free, good reviews, I think it's totally worth checking out. Anyway, moving on to our first news story. You may have already noticed this, but on your PS4 home screen, there's now a PS5 Remote Play application, and this is exactly what you think it is. You can now remotely control a PS5 console if you happen to own one, and this is actually part of the PlayStation 5's home screen as well, if you didn't already notice. There is a Remote Play app on PS5 where you can remote control a PS4 or another PS5 console. Now, Remote Play has always been reserved to just controlling the console from an outside device like a mobile phone or PC. Vita TV was our one example where that little device almost creates a second PS4 within your household because that had Remote Play as well, and that connects to a television. But otherwise, this is the first instance now where we have multiple PlayStation consoles being able to Remote Play each other. And so there are not many situations where you probably want to use this, but you could, for example, remote control your PS5 from another room, possibly use it for media apps or something. When it comes to actually playing games and just the resolution in general, it's limited to 1080p, so not really ideal. However, this is now a feature of your PS4 and even when you get a PS5. Next up, it looks like Insomniac Games has confirmed that they will support the save file transfer feature for the 2018 Spider-Man to the PS5 Remaster. Initially, they weren't going to do this, and that was a bit strange to hear because we knew that Miles Morales would support this, and so if you bought that game on PS4, eventually did your free upgrade to PS5, you would be able to continue playing your same save file, no problem. Now, this is developer dependent. We knew that. These are two separate versions of the game at the end of the day, and so there is some developer intervention that has to happen in order to get this working. That's why some teams were supporting this and some weren't. It was just weird that for Insomniac, they're the same developer, so why are one of their games doing this and the other one isn't? We don't really have a reason for that, but either way, they are supporting it now through an update for the PS4 version that'll come closer to Thanksgiving. So it's not going to be ready in time for PS5's launch, but you will have a chance to move over your save file. And we also found out that the 3 new suits for the PS5 Remaster will also come to the PS4 version in that same update. So not too bad. I mean, obviously this was still a bit polarizing of a decision at the time, but it looks like they will support it in the end. Moving on, if you remember during our last episode, we had a news story about Gran Turismo 7 and the possibility of it launching within the first half of 2021, and our only source there was a YouTube ad from Sony where it said that in the bottom left corner of the thumbnail, and we weren't really sure if that was a mistake or an isolated scenario or whatever. Well, now we've got direct confirmation from Sony again in pretty much the same manner here on YouTube. They recently uploaded a PlayStation 5 launch trailer, a lot of gameplay for the games that we've already known about, but on the bottom of the video in plain view it says Gran Turismo 7, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Returnal, all coming the first half of 2021. Also on the bottom there, Horizon Forbidden West, anticipated second half of 2021, which we were expecting. God of War as well, more than likely closer to like holiday 2021. Now it's not saying that here, of course, because there is no God of War footage to be seen right now, and it's not included in this video, so that's probably why it doesn't mention that game. But wow, like we mentioned a few days ago, this is a very packed first year. I'm impressed, I have to say. This is a lot of high-quality PlayStation Studio content coming within not only the first year, but the first 6 months. I mean, that's a decent amount, and there's usually a little something there for everybody, right? Not everyone's going to enjoy every single one of these titles, but you know, Gran Turismo is still a very important title for millions of PlayStation fans. It's one of the longest-running franchises in PlayStation history, and this is a system seller, no doubt. It's a very specific experience, but for those looking forward to it, this will motivate them to buy a console much sooner than they otherwise would have in situations where it took a while for Gran Turismo 5 to come out or Gran Turismo Sport. You know, this is probably going to move some units a lot faster. Now, for our next news story, I don't know when I brought this up, but it was probably during one of these Friday videos, and I said, look, when we get close to launch, Sony will probably put up a large FAQ that answers a lot of questions that we may still have about PS5, and that's exactly what happened yesterday over on the PlayStation blog. They did, in fact, put up a very large FAQ, and most of it's largely redundant just because it's a lot of info that we've been covering here for the last 2+ years. But I did cherry pick some of the new details and things that we haven't heard before, or information that's recently been cleared up. And so we'll just knock these out one by one in no particular order. Starting with this, will PS5's UI support folders or themes at launch? No, PS5 will not support folders or themes at launch. So we did hear about folders within this past week, but themes were still a toss-up. We did have one rumor about a Dead by Daylight PlayStation Store listing referencing a PS5 theme, but no themes at launch. Now, it is worth pointing out, what would custom themes even look like on PS5? Because realistically, they would have to override the entire aesthetics of the user experience on this console, because we know that when you hover over an application on PS5, the screen real estate is taken over by imagery from that application. So for a game, you get a large image from the game. Music plays just like how we saw on PS3 and PS4. PS4 did do this as well. Some people often forget this, but if you scroll downward on a game, it would be the same thing. You'd get game imagery, music would play. It would be developer dependent, but PS3 and PS4 did this. It's just on PS5, this is unavoidable. There is no default theme of PS5 outside of the initial login screen and settings where you get that amber bronze gold with the shine in the top left corner. I mean, that's not on all the time. Anytime you're on the regular home screen, applications are front and center. So if we got custom themes, they would really have to override that to even be worth using or buying or putting on. And I don't think that really would be a problem, so I hope that is what they would do. Anyway, moving on though, can I listen to my own music while playing on PS5? Yes, Spotify will be supported at launch, enabling music playback, including in-game background music. Players can also listen to music from a USB drive, including MP3, FLAC, and AAC formats. Now, we knew about Spotify, however, with PS4, we actually had to wait for a firmware update to get the Media Player app, and that allowed us to listen to music off of a USB drive if you had individual files yourself. And on PS5, this is available day one, so that's good to see. How will social features like Friends List and Party be improved with PS5? One of their answers here was, want to share your gaming experience using SharePlay, PlayStation Plus membership required. You can also hand over control of your game to a trusted friend or use it to play a local co-op game together. So this was something that many people have been wanting to know if this was still part of PS5. Yes, it is in fact still here. Can I transfer my captured media, gameplay clips, screenshots, from PS4 to PS5? No, though you can export them via the built-in Capture Gallery application to a compatible USB drive from your PS4 console for safekeeping. So we've seen the transfer process a few times, or at least the options you have here for moving PS4 content to PS5. That'll include games, save files, but not your gameplay clips and screenshots. So if you do want to retain those, make sure that you take care of that before you actually get rid of your PS4 or transfer over all your games. Does PS5 feature a web browser? No, the PS5 system doesn't include a dedicated web browser app. So this is interesting because we know right now reviewers with the console running on a pre-release firmware, in their settings, there's a clear reference to a web browser being available. Now, they don't have the feature right now, but in settings, you can clearly see that they have toggles and settings for a web browser. So it looks like they either got rid of this, scrapped it, or the day one firmware is going to remove these settings and remove the feature entirely. They do have a working web browser on PS4. They could easily move that over, update it, do whatever they want. But it looks like right now, at least, it's probably something that they are just going to scrap entirely. Not only did most people probably not use this, but if they did, they were probably using it for exploits because you can do a lot through the web browser, and they might want to close up that loophole, I'm guessing. Although I will say there's always a smaller feature that may not get a lot of widespread love and attention, but for the people that do actively like using it, they're going to be pretty upset about this. Can I store or play PS5 games from a USB drive? So we actually saw the answer to this a few days ago, but no, players cannot transfer PS5 games to a USB drive. PS5 games must be stored on the console's internal ultra-high-speed SSD for gameplay. Explorations for allowing players to store but not play PS5 games on a USB drive in a future update are underway. So I know it's very frustrating at this point, the storage situation on PS5, the internal storage, there's not a whole lot to go around, you can't expand it, Sony hasn't whitelisted any drives just yet, so you're really stuck with just trying to manage PS4 content on an external drive to try and save the precious SSD space. But this is something where over time you'll clearly see this feature come in through a firmware update. I know that Series X does it day one, but that's what we were trying to explain a few weeks or a few months ago whenever I said this. You're not going to get feature parity with PS4. You're not going to get feature parity with even Microsoft's machine. There are going to be differences, and this is one of them. But thankfully, we can see these things come back with firmware updates. Will PlayStation Plus offer PS5 games? All PlayStation Plus members will continue to receive at least 2 great PS4 games each month. It is our goal to add PS5 games regularly to the monthly games lineup, so check back with us at PS Blog for our monthly PlayStation Plus announcements. So this is great. Initially it was concerning, even after seeing the PlayStation Plus collection. That was a great value, but those are still PS4 games, and so we were wondering, are actual PS5 titles going to be added to the benefits of PlayStation Plus? Well, then we saw Destruction All-Stars getting delayed, and that couldn't be more better of a situation for that game and just people in general. Then we saw Bugsnax, and now we have this direct answer on the PS blog about the game's lineup in general. So it does look like moving forward we can expect more PS5 titles. It's more a matter of, will it be monthly? Will it actually be monthly? Because Bugsnax rolls into well past December, and same with Destruction All-Stars. So will PS5 games be more of a bi-monthly basis, or will it turn into monthly? We don't know just yet. Does the DualSense wireless controller come in black or any other color? In the future, other colors will become available, but there are no announcements to share at this time. So this couldn't be more of an obvious answer, and you really did not need to hear this, but if you did, there's your confirmation. This was always a matter of when, not if, and so when can we see this? Probably within the first half of 2021, you'll see the first color variations show up, and they might start off modest with things like black, blue, red, but we did see them towards the end of the PS4 lifecycle get very aggressive in this area and offer a lot of wild colors, and same with consoles. Not quite to the extent that Microsoft did, which I know people would like to see, but at the very least, Sony did explore a lot of different color patterns, and so hopefully they do that sooner with the DualSense, because there are certain people out there that really can't stand the white design or how white will stain over time, and that's why some people are even customizing their controllers right now, but you'll have options, and this is why I also recommend don't buy an extra controller if you really don't need it, because then you're going to end up spending another $70 for when your favorite color shows up. Now, the last thing I wanted to point out in that FAQ was the PS5's launch lineup. That's right, we have what appears to be a complete list of all the day one PlayStation 5 games that you will be able to buy and play. We were waiting for this for quite a while, and it came right up until the very end, and there could be differences depending on the region, but this looks like a complete list, so we're going to go through every game here. On day one, PlayStation 5, Astro's Playroom, Demon's Souls, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered, Sackboy: A Big Adventure, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Borderlands 3, Bugsnax, Dead by Daylight, Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, Dirt 5, Fortnite, Godfall, Gunya Fighter, King Oddball, Maneater, NBA 2K21, No Man's Sky, Observer System Redux, Overcooked All You Can Eat, The Pathless, Planet Coaster, Warhammer Chaos Bane Slayer Edition, Watch Dogs Legion, WRC9 FIA World Rally Championship. And there you have it. That is your day one PlayStation 5 launch lineup between first, second, and third party. It is worth pointing out not all these games are available at retail. Some of them are existing PS4 games that get free PS5 upgrades. Some of them are only available through the PlayStation Store, but that is everything, and I think this is easily one of the strongest launch lineups we've had in a very long time. There's a little something here for everybody, which is good, and these are all really solid games, good to great games. When it comes to PS5 titles, I mean, Demon's Souls, I think arguably is probably one of the best looking games here. Same with Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's a shorter experience, but that's pretty much the game that has the wide reach. Then you've got something like Demon's Souls, not for everybody, but a game you can spend a lot of time with. You can go into this console with not a lot of money outside of maybe just buying this machine, and you could already be sitting on PS5 versions just from your PS4 library. If you're a PS Plus member, you've got that PlayStation Plus collection. A lot of these games are boosted. Some of these games see some more native boosts like God of War. So, I mean, there's a lot to do here on day one. You got Bugsnax. This has got to be the most friendly generation you can walk into, buying just the console, possibly just a PS Plus membership, and you've got a lot to work through. Which, this is actually a good time to point out, this holds true for Microsoft as well, and today is their launch for Xbox Series S and X, so congratulations, Microsoft. It really is a tall order to ship brand new hardware during this difficult year, so all the teams involved from Sony and Microsoft, it really is incredible that they were able to move these machines out. Same for all the game creators that worked so hard to make sure the launch lineups were ready in time. For Series S and X, some people were getting their consoles a little bit early. I was not one of those people. Mine actually was delayed by a day, I think, so I'm expecting my Series X tomorrow, which is a big bummer because I want to play it all day. But that's the same deal there. If you have Game Pass and that's all you have, you are good to go on day one. You might already have existing X1 games. This is such a friendly generation to go into, and I think you can't really go wrong with that, especially if you go for the premium machines where you're spending more than you might not be comfortable with. But anyway, moving on to our next news story. This was confirmed outside of the FAQ that we just went over. For PS5 save files, these have to go through PS Plus cloud storage if you want to move them around or send them to a different console. You can't put them on a USB drive, and this didn't change for PS4 save files. So you can still move those through PS Plus or a USB drive, but PS5 there is a limitation. Has to go through PS Plus, and this is definitely annoying because now you have to have an active membership to not only upload it but also pull it. So I hope this is also remedied down the road through a firmware update. Moving on to our next news story. Actually, we've got two news stories here that are both from Bloomberg, but they're separate reports, so we'll start with this one, which this first article is a little long-winded. There's no one detail we can pull out of here, just that it boils down to there's some possible tensions going on between some of the employees at PlayStation Japan versus the new headquarters in San Mateo, California, and a lot of this plays into the previous performance of PlayStation 4, how PS4 underperformed in Japan, and so some of the guys, or apparently one of the executives at San Mateo, California, who was not named, of course, said that they were frustrated with the Japanese marketing team and how they didn't push enough PS4s, whereas some of the guys in Japan feel frustrated with the fact that they're not being given guidance on PS5. They feel as though Sony's not really focusing on the Japanese market, and there's not a lot of allocation of units for the Japanese market, and so there just seems to be some tensions growing there. The article does also mention that Microsoft's looking to court more Japanese developers, and so apparently they've approached a lot of teams, big and small, to try and make something work out. But anyway, the bulk of the article is just about PlayStation's performance in Japan and how Sony may be shying away from the market, which a Sony spokesperson did deny. They said the market's very important to them, and it is their home turf, and so there's obviously a certain level of importance still there, but I think it is very easy to see just from a consumer glance that we know they have been globalizing PlayStation. That was their most recent effort, which is they want to make sure that they can provide marketing material that works in all territories, not have all these separate slogans and separate commercials, which is challenging in its own right. So, I mean, I can understand how there's going to be some issues there, but even something as simple as unifying the PlayStation buttons for all territories, which really Japan was the only oddball out here. Since the very first PlayStation, circle was to enter, X was to go back, and it's been like that up until right now with PS5. That was finally changed. It's a small thing, but I think it's one of the examples that even an outsider could see and go, oh yeah, they might not be as committed to that market anymore. But really, a lot of that just plays into not just the Japanese market changing, which they've always favored handhelds, but the Japanese population. It seems like there's less people there every single year, but a lot of that is just elders passing off. I believe children, the birth rate for children is still doing okay, but I don't know, I don't have the complete data on that. But, you know, times are just different. I don't know if this is really a matter of Sony distancing themselves away from the Japanese market or not caring about their homeland. Rather, they're just doing things that probably make a lot more sense, like westernizing PlayStation by setting up their headquarters in San Mateo, California, doing this globalization effort. I mean, you can still ship and release the product in Japan, but also focus on some of your larger markets, which as a business you probably are going to want to do. Now, the next report is about how Sony considered possibly pricing games more than $70, which right now we know Sony's going with $70 for some of their more premium first party. Other publishers are doing the same thing. So not every publisher is there just yet, but this is probably going to be the new standard, and apparently Sony was considering more than 70. So the report says, and I quote here, "At one point Sony discussed going even higher before settling on $70. Many of the game executives requested anonymity, apparently because they recognize the move is unpopular. In many cases, companies won't acknowledge the fee increase, saying only that prices will vary by title." So with something like this, when it's a published article that you can read, you might have more of a gut reaction in the veins of, I can't believe these people, how could they possibly charge more than 70? Games are already very expensive, what about microtransactions? But the reality is that you did not need this article to remind you that they're always thinking about their game prices, evaluating the market, and trying to figure out what the market can bear. And so while it is important to talk about what they're thinking about, I think it's more important to look at what does come to market. And in this case, it was $70 games, a $10 increase here in the US. Depending on where you live, it could have been more, but as an example, here in the US, it was a $10 increase. And also worth pointing out that we are in a cross-gen period, so it does look weird for certain publishers that might be offering 60 to 70 free upgrades. You know, that's why not everybody's on board just yet, but we have to wait till we leave PS4 and X1 to see where the prices fall, but it will probably be $70. And this is something where most of us probably saw this coming. It's like we have inflation, rising game costs, and prices have stayed 60 for 2 generations, and so I don't want to sit here and sympathize with multi-billion-dollar companies, but I think we all kind of saw this coming. Now, This is also where I generally seem to have a very unpopular take here, but I don't know, I've never really changed my take on this, which is, as the consumer, you do have more power in that nobody's forcing you to buy any of these things. So this is what I always love about physical games media, is that games devalue. In fact, they devalue very quickly. They are depreciating assets. They don't rise in value often at all. Unless you're Nintendo first party, you're probably going to be able to get a very good deal within a year. So again, Nintendo first party, you're lucky to get $15 off 2 years later. But point being, generally speaking, for games, they devalue. So while you may be excited to play a game day one, a lot of people are very open about this. They don't buy games on day one, and you don't have to. There's a lot of great sales out there. There's used games. You can borrow games. I mean, the digital edition PS5, my only worry there wasn't that you don't actually own the games. I'm not one of those people. My thing is, look, you're stuck with the PlayStation Store, so you don't really get to decide when you can buy games on sale. Sony and the publishers get to decide that. That's my concern. So, you know, as a consumer, you do have, I think you have all the leverage here. This is an expensive hobby, and I always feel for people that reach out from, say, the Middle East or South America, and they've got these crazy import fees, and gaming's very expensive over there, like absurdly expensive, or it might be banned where they live. I mean, it sucks. It really does. But when it comes to these big multi-billion-dollar companies, you do have, I think, more power than they do. They would be nothing without you, so, you know, vote with your wallet. Now, moving on to our next news story, the Washington Post conducted an interview with the PS5 product designer, Yuji Morisawa, and one thing that they asked him was about the size of PlayStation 5, and so we've got a great quote here from the PS5 product designer where he says, "In the beginning, when I started drawing, it was much larger even though I didn't know what engineering was going to do. It's kind of funny that engineering actually told me it's too big, so I actually had to shrink it down a little bit from the first drawing." That is so cool that he knew the console was going to be quite large, because that's the thing, is that there's a conversation between engineering and design to figure out what the box can realistically fit and how that design needs to be shaped around the thermals of the machine. And so that's very important, right? That's why whenever those concepts always came out online, I said don't look at those, because those concepts aren't made with any of that stuff in mind. There's a lot more at play with this major product launch. And so what's funny is that he thought this thing needed to be bigger than it actually was, and it's already the largest PlayStation that we've ever had, so I thought that was somewhat noteworthy. And I do like the little sketch that they also revealed as well. It's always nice to see these little inside touches about the development of the product. Next up, we have another update for a news story that we covered in the last episode, that one being for PlayStation VR. If you remember, that story was about how Hitman 3 and No Man's Sky are getting PS5 versions, but if you want to play the PSVR modes of those games, and you want to play it on PS5, you have to do it through the PS4 version through backwards compatibility, as in you can't utilize the PSVR headset to play a PS5 game. And so it was also implied from a comment from the Sony spokesperson to Upload VR that the current headset can really only be used for PS4 games on PS5, and that was it. Well, that's not entirely true, because we just found out Blood and Truth is getting a PS5 patch for the current game on PS4. So on PS5, this patch will give you a higher resolution, higher frame rate, highest detail assets used at all times, and improved texture details. This is excellent news. This means developers can in fact go back and patch their VR games to recognize PS5 hardware, and you can get some boosted performance beyond just decreased load times, right? Because that's really all you're going to get out of PSVR games. Possibly a higher frame rate, but again, it depends on if the games are capped. But this really just falls into the confusing nature of how Sony, I guess, is deeming a native PlayStation 5 game versus a PS4 game getting a PS5 patch, but not being completely labeled a PlayStation 5 game. I mean, there is a difference here, and there's a fine line. And if you recall, there was a news story a long time ago where we know that there was a mandate July 13th onward, where if you're submitting a game to Sony, the game has to work on PlayStation 5. And what they mean by that is not just through backwards compatibility, the game has to be natively recognized on the platform. So it doesn't necessarily mean the game is a PlayStation 5 title, but it works without going through backwards compatibility, essentially. So it's a little bit of that, I'm guessing. I mean, when you look at something like the launch lineup, Borderlands 3 had enough of a next-gen upgrade to be coded as a PlayStation 5 game instead of, say, the 2018 God of War, which is inherently still a PS4 game that has a PS5 patch to recognize extra enhancements beyond what it could do on PS4. That's what gets rather confusing about the nomenclature surrounding this, and there's got to be something on Sony's end that is a minimum spec for what would warrant a game now being labeled as a PlayStation 5 game. But anyway, with all that said, it's time to get to Let's Talk Plus, the usually weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. If you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel, a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner on the next episode, which would be Friday the 20th. And I'm trying to pay for your games. Those are all the news stories that I want to talk about you all. Now, I did just break an 8-year streak of this show because I have not missed a single Friday for 8 years, which is crazy to think about, but I mean, it was warranted this time. I'm still a one-man show. The entire channel's done by me, so I can't reasonably do another episode on Friday right when the console comes out, and I have all these plans for videos to do. So this probably worked out better anyway. We had a lot to discuss here, and then we'll have our show go back to Friday, starting from the 20th onward, which Europe will then have PS5 by then, so that'll be good. And then we'll start weekly coverage of the platform now that it's in most people's hands at that point. So exciting stuff. I will see you all on Thursday for PlayStation 5. You take it easy.